1. I live in an apartment, and as such, have a communal laundry on property. While I do generally use it if I have large amounts of laundry, or am doing our bed linens, I will often visit a public laundry. This situation only occurred a few weeks ago, and what's more is that I had my daughter with me. The first part of doing the wash was fairly uneventful. Even the transfer of the wash to the dryers was pleasant, quiet, and peaceful. Since we live in the desert, my daughter and I drove about the corner to a gas station to get some cool drinks and relax in the AC of my SUV while we waited for the dryer to finish. While I pulled into the parking lot of the laundry, I noticed a car that wasn't there before. Of course, with it being a laundry, other people would be there doing their own wash. However, what stood out was that the person had left their driver's side door wide open, with the keys still in the ignition. With my toddler with me, I became a little nervous and decided to leave her in the car, AC running, while I used the fob, remote that locks and unlocks doors, to lock her in. I walked into the laundry, nervously darting my eyes about until I found the apparent owner of the car, a tall, dark man, thin with thick glasses. I walked to my dryer and began pulling my clothes out to check for dampness, when I heard a sheepish voice utter, "Damn it!" behind me. I tried to ignore it, but it became hard when I heard it again, a little louder. "God damn it!" he said. I turned around and made eye contact with him, his eyes looking like giant saucers behind his Coke bottle lenses. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to be polite as I stuck another quarter in my dryer, moving to the second of 4 dryers holding my clothes and linens. "I can't figure out how to use these pods. I tossed them in the drum, but just noticed the drawer for detergent." He shook a dollar store-sized bag of Arm & Hammer detergent pods, the kind that only held about 5 or 6 pods. I offered a smile and answered, "You did it right. Pods always go in the drum." I turned my back to him as I pulled my clothes out of the second dryer, tossing them unfolded into the basket I left on the floor. As I kicked the basket to the third dryer, I felt a sense of unease over me. The hairs on my arm began erecting, and something told me to turn around immediately. When I did, he was standing closer to me. I could hear him breathing like Brainy from Hey Arnold. "You're quite attractive." I gave a sheepish smile as I yanked my clothes from the third dryer, shoving them into the basket without checking for wetness. "Do you have a boyfriend?" His words were dripping with malice, like his thoughts were everywhere but that question. "Married for 10 years, I said firmly. I was already making my way to the 4th dryer when he moved in front of me and almost growled at me. "Oh, that's too bad, you know. If I were your man, I wouldn't make you go to the laundry. I'd do your laundry every day." I shivered at the thought of him being this close to me, and grabbed my linens from the 4th dryer. I shoved my basket back to the 1st dryer, the one I put the extra quarter in, getting ready to pull out the final garments when his voice slithered to my ears again. "There's a bathroom over there. No one would have to know. I want to see what your milky skin feels like." I trembled again, pulling my garments out of the dryer. "Please just leave me alone," I whispered, picking up my basket and holding it to my chest. "My daughter is in the car. I have to go." He took a step closer, his arm reaching out to me. Before he could touch me, someone walked in. "Whose kid is in the running car? She's crying really loud," the woman said. I released my breath I didn't realize I was holding and ducked under the man, practically running out the door. I mustered a thank you to the woman as I fiddled with the door, remembering it was locked. I unlocked the fob, threw my basket into the car, and flung myself into the driver's seat, leaving a layer of rubber on the asphalt as I peeled out. I hadn't been that scared in a very long time. So to the tall, skinny man with the creepy vibe, I hope we never meet again. 2. I was 18 years old when I started my theatre course in Paris. I was so excited. I lived 1 hour by train from Paris, and I did the journey every day. You have to know that my city is known for being really friendly, and we are joyful. In other words, Parisian people have the reputation of always being grumpy. It's important for later. After my class that day, I went to the train station as usual. My seat in the train was given by my ticket, and the train was really busy, so it was impossible to change. I am very joyful this day, and I sat down next to a guy and said hi with a smile. He looked at me and said hi back. The train started. I was looking at my phone or a book when I saw him taking a notebook from his bag. I started to feel weird. You know that feeling when the guy next to you does not act like he is supposed to? I didn't want to be rude, so I just looked at the notebook very discreetly. But what I saw just made me feel super cold. He had an entire notebook full of pictures of women cut from magazines. The women had chirurgical markings on them, like he was going to cut the head or the arms off. I saw orange-red marks who looked like dried blood also. I felt really bad and my head started to spin. You have to know also that I was still very innocent and quiet, and I always avoid conflict because I never felt entitled to yell at people. I just took my stuff and searched for another seat. My heart was pounding, and I had the urge to check if he followed me, but I was way too scared. People in the train were really grumpy looking, and I was way too scared that they wouldn't take me seriously if I asked for help. Finally, I saw an empty seat next to a guy in a 4-seat area. 2 seats in front of 2 other seats. Hi, I'm so sorry, but there's a really weird guy, and I'm really scared. Can you help me, please? The guy looked a bit annoyed, like I was bothering him, but he stood up and gave me the empty seat next to the window. We were at the end of a wagon. The other 2 people just didn't care, like, at all. Still really scared, I tried to relax and calm down. The helping hand guy fell asleep. I texted my mom about my stress and what happened, and asked her to come to my wagon when I arrive at my city train station. And then, I saw the creepy guy come looking for me. He saw me sat at my new seat. He sat down between 2 wagons behind a glass door to continue staring at me with crazy eyes, and was waving at me and asking me to come. My heart was pounding, and for the rest of the journey I felt like crying, and I forced myself not to look at him, as he never looked away. The train arrived at the station, and I asked help to get off from the guy next to me, and the other people around, but no one took me seriously. I managed to get off with my hoodie and my bag and started to literally run for my life. My mom caught me, panicked, and started trying to calm me down, saying everything is fine, now I am here. If he tries anything, I will punch him. Oh, Ma, I love you. But as we walked down in the station, I saw him waiting for me. I told my mom she is a psychiatrist for criminals, irony. He started following us, so we decided to fake going to the subway instead of our car. We suddenly stopped, and we saw him continue to the subway. I ran towards military guys and told them everything in case he came back. Gosh, I was inspired doing this. Went back to my mom, and he starts coming back to us more determined. I think he wanted to talk to us, or worse this time. I waved to the military guys that came and stopped him. I heard them talking to him, and I just ran with my mom to the car. I didn't feel relief until we arrived at home. I still feel super proud of myself to have been able to handle the situation, and most of all going back to school as nothing happened the next Monday. My mom certainly saved my life. I have met weird people before and after that story, and even my mom, who is strong and courageous with her job, was really on her guard. I can still describe the guy. I can see the color and shape of his suitcase and his smell. Thanks, Mama. You're the best, and I hope I can repay you one day. 3. I grew up in the South. Tons and tons of beautiful places to see that haven't been taken over by concrete yet. It's nice, but along with that, it's pretty boring. Being a teenager and wanting to go out and have fun led to mostly improvising with your buddies and hoping something good will come out of the night. There wasn't really a local spot to go hang out like a club or cool bar, and the places that were close to this was boring because you did them so many times. I'm sure if you've ever lived in a rural area, you can understand that feeling completely. Something that I found a ton of enjoyment in as a teen was just cruising around super late at night, listening to music. I would fill my gas tank up, grab something to drink on, a cigarillo, and just take off driving around until the sun came up. It was a way for me to just clear my mind and relax. Those country back roads were always fun to drive down at 2 a.m., and was also just the right amount of spooky. Well, one night I absolutely got more than I was to bargain for. I can't remember what month it was exactly, but I know for a fact that it was in the summertime because I was out of school, and I also remember it being a comfortable, chill night. So if I was to guess, it had just been around July or August. I was cruising around like I always did, and was completely worry-free. I had music blaring, and I was in my zone. I decided to head down to a park just out of boredom. This particular park is at the very end of a long stretch of desolate country road, but it is a really pretty drive because of that. When I say desolate country road, I don't mean that it's some dirt road that goes through the woods or anything crazy like that. It is a normal paved road, but there is nothing really on it after a certain point. The entire road takes about 20 minutes to drive down to get to the park, and after about 10 minutes into the drive, the houses start to get spread out further and further to becoming no houses, and just road leading into the park. I think a lot of the reason I liked this drive at night is because of how creepy it was, and I looked at it as some sort of adventure or whatever. The park isn't open for camping or anything. It's mostly just a lot of land with walking trails and biking trails set up through miles of woods. So obviously at around 3 AM, it's pretty dead. I made it there, and just did a slow, normal little loop around the drive of the park. The night before it stormed very badly, so badly I remember my parents and I had to take shelter because of a threat of a tornado touchdown. There ended up being no tornado, but the storms were pretty damn rough. Because of this, I came up on a fallen tree in the road that looped around to the exit of the park. That must have happened because of the storm. It wasn't some massive tree or anything, but I know for a fact that there was no way I could have gotten over it in my car. Obviously. It was pitch black everywhere besides the front of my car because of my headlights, and because of that, I immediately rolled out backing up the entire way I just drove when I entered the park. I knew that was super dangerous, and there was no way. At this point on the road, there was a flat land on each side of me. I figured that it would make the most sense to just back up in the grass beside me just a little, and then drive back the way I came. It was a one-way loop around the park, but I wasn't really worried about going out the wrong way since it was so late. So I started to back up off the road so I could get my car turned around. All was good until I went to pull back up on the road. I totally didn't take into account how wet the grass was and the amount of mud. My car went absolutely nowhere. My back tires were completely stuck and were spinning in place as I was trying to floor the gas pedal. I started to become pretty scared at this point. Not the most ideal situation to be in. I immediately took my cell phone out of my pocket and saw that I had service. Super huge feeling of relief. I called my parents and told them what happened and where I was. They were pretty pissed at me, but said they will pay for a tow truck to come get me out. My parents both drove small 4-door sedans, and they would have been zero help in this situation. I was about 45 minutes away from my house and the rest of most human civilization. So I realized that I would be stuck out there for at least an hour before someone was able to get me. Freaky feeling. But I tried getting out of my head and just continued to listen to music, and be on my phone in the car while I waited. Not really much more I could do. After I kind of calmed down from the initial anger I had, I started to check out my surroundings. I didn't even notice at first because of everything going on, but in front of my car's placement was a field that was full of the most amount of deer I think I've ever seen at once. There legitimately must have been 40 deer in this field just walking around eating the grass. The field wasn't directly in front of my car, but if I was able to get out and throw a rock in that direction, I would have easily been able to hit one of them. So if I was to guess, they were about 30 yards out. This didn't really help with the creepy level going on. Looking out in front of your car and seeing 80-eye reflections staring back at you is a bit of an alarming feeling overall, but I was relieved it was just a field of deer. I watched them for a little bit, but I was quickly over it and started to just browse through my social media apps while waiting. They seemed to have been over it quicker than I was because they all went back to walking around and eating, once they figured out that I wasn't going to attack them or anything. After browsing my phone for about 15 minutes, I finally get a call back from my parents, letting me know that a tow truck guy is on the way, and about an hour and a half out from my location. Still to this day I remember hearing that and having the thought, "You've got to be fucking kidding me." I understood that me, and only me, was the reason I was in the situation I was in, so I couldn't really be mad at anyone else. But that was very obviously not what I wanted to hear. I decided that the smartest thing for me to do was just make sure my doors were all locked, lay back in my seat, and take a nap to pass time quick. So that's what I did. Okay, here we go. So I wake up 45 minutes later to the feeling of being watched. I'm not sure if anyone has ever experienced that feeling before, because I don't know how common it is. But there was a sixth sense alarm going off in my head telling me that I need to wake up. Waking up to that feeling in the situation I was in and the surroundings I was in is probably worst case scenario. I sit up and immediately check my surroundings and see nothing. I looked through my car very quickly for any sort of weapon and found a pocket knife. Fucking pocket knife. I was very scared. Even though I saw and heard absolutely nothing, that feeling is terrifying. I was shocked to see that the field of deer in front of me was still full of deer. I don't know anything about the animal, but I guess I always just assumed they don't hang out in the same place for long. Not sure why I thought that, but I was surprised to see them nonetheless. I called my parents back to see if they heard any kind of update from the tow truck dude. I decided not to mention the feeling I was having because I didn't want to worry them more, and I also knew that it was literally nothing more than a feeling I had nothing to back up why I was feeling that way other than just being spooked out in general. No update from the tow truck guy, so we all assumed everything was still the same on his end. The call lasted just a few minutes because I felt like such a dick. They both had to wake up for work in a few hours, now have to spend a random $100+, and on top of all that, they were worried about me. I could tell they were annoyed at the situation, but worried. I told them I'll make sure to tell them when the guy arrives, and I'm sorry. We hung up, and I looked up from the phone and immediately went from 0 to 100 in panic mode. The deer in front of me were all completely perked up, staring in the same direction right of them. Let me remind you that there are around 40 deer in this field. Every single one of them were stopped dead in their tracks, standing completely still, looking at something. I put my high beams on and started waiting for absolutely anything to happen at all. Nothing. I tapped my horn real quick. They didn't even budge or look away. They were all still completely glued to what was by them. The way the tree line was, I couldn't see that far over in the field. I know they were looking into the woods by them, but where I was at, I was only able to see them. I could hear my heartbeat. I grabbed that stupid pocket knife and just waited for something to happen. I would say it was about a minute after I honked. Every single one of them in unison started to run the opposite way. They were running at full speed, and within 20 seconds the field was completely empty. I was petrified in fear. I knew that staying in my car is what would be the safest thing to do. But it's the worst feeling in the world when you feel like a sitting duck. My head was on a swivel. I was freaking out in every way possible. I assumed that it was a bear or something. But it could have been absolutely anything. I was convinced at that point it was the devil himself. I didn't know what to do. I knew that the tow truck was close by, but I had no idea where he was. I began to shake because of nerves and just looked around to make sure nothing was by me, and focusing on the field in front of me. I did this for what felt like an actual eternity, sitting in complete silence and darkness in the middle of nowhere, waiting for something to jump out and attack you. 15 of the longest minutes of my life go by, and I start to see lights break through the tree line on the road. As it gets closer, I see it was the tow truck guy. The lights on his truck felt like it was Jesus coming from heaven to rescue me. He gets up to me and I jump out of my car and I immediately ask him if he has a gun on him. I told him very quickly what just happened to me, and that something is definitely out here nearby. He let me know that he had a shotgun in the truck, and assured me that it was most likely deer or a bobcat. He gave me the whole, "They're more scared of you than you are of them," bull. The tree was small enough for him to sort of bulldoze it out of the way with his truck, and then he attached my car to his and pulled me out of the spot I was stuck in. He was very nonchalant about what I just experienced, but I was pretty badly shaken up from it. The whole time he was doing his thing, I still had my eyes glued out in that field waiting for something. He was completely done with everything in about 15 minutes, and he told me to follow his truck out of there onto the main road again. I got in my car and was ready more than anything to get the hell out of this park. We started to drive away from the spot I was in, and I still had my head on a swivel, completely shook up. As we were driving away, I looked in my rear-view mirror. We were down the dark road just a tiny bit, but I could still see the spot I was stuck in, partially lit up by the vehicle's lights and the moon. I watched in my rear-view mirror. A man came out of the tree line behind where my car was, and walked into the middle of the road and watched us drive away. My heart stopped beating, legitimately. I lost my breath and my eyes started to get full of tears because of how absolutely scared I was in this moment. I couldn't see any sort of details like what he looked like or even necessarily what he was wearing. To be honest, I don't really care. The feeling that I felt driving away from that spot, knowing he was right there the whole time watching me as I was freaking out, looking around, watching me as I was completely alone for a long time. Maybe even coming right up to my window and watching me as I slept. That's a feeling that I can't necessarily put into words. All these years later, and it still messes with me quite a bit. The entire time we were driving off, as long as I could see him, he didn't move. Just watched us from the road. A million things went through my mind. I was scared there may have been multiple people up the road waiting for us. I was trying to figure out if I should start beating on my horn like crazy to get the tow truck guy to stop or not. I decided that all I wanted to do was get out of there, more than anything. The second we finally got out of the park and were able to be on a 2-lane road again, I flew past the tow truck driver, and I did nothing below 70 miles per hour the entire way home. I flew through stop signs and stoplights. I absolutely did not care. The only thing in my mind was making it home. I got home, ran inside, very quickly acknowledged my parents and said sorry and thank you, and went to my room. I didn't get a single second of sleep the rest of the night. I was searching for any sort of record of things happening in that area, escaped convicts, similar stories, etc. I came to the conclusion the man was some sort of squatter or homeless. I read many things online how it's common for homeless in rural areas to build shelter in the woods. Which does make sense to me entirely on why they would do that. But obviously, the unknown is the scariest part of it all. What if he wasn't homeless? What if he was going to hurt me? What if? There are so many possibilities of what could have happened, but the outcome that did happen is what I'm most grateful for. I never told my parents this story until many years after it happened, and I was already an adult and moved out. It freaked them the fuck out too when I told them. I never went back to that park, ever. Even though I no longer live by there, I still have no desire at all to ever go back there. I don't think I even could in broad daylight, with a ton of people around. I also made the decision to stop doing those late-night cruises. I did a few after that time with people, but even then I felt very uncomfortable and on edge. So man in the woods, let's not meet ever again. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 334. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Don't know what's with the birds, but they seem very chirpy today, more so than usual. Annoying. Anyway. Okay, first day back at it. I'm recording this on Monday the 23rd. Back at it after my week off, and I'm already ready for a second one. I may actually do that, we'll see. Wouldn't actually be quite as much work for this one, because I'd really just need to take the following week. Might work out. Now let's see, updates. Yes, I'm going to push back Glitch Monthly about 2 weeks, just because, like I say, I'm just getting back into it, and I'm kind of finding my feet again here. And so it will be up. I've already got about a quarter of the stories I need for it anyway. So let's say about 2 weeks at most for that one. And I also need to think about something Halloween related for next month. Gonna be busy. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.